Well, welcome everyone. I'm Denny Miller and welcome to Indy 500 Yesteryear and Today with Speedway Insiders Paul Page, Bob Gates, and Paul, we got a special guest today, a friend of yours. Please introduce Poppy.
Actually, I'm a fan of this guy. The first time he came to notice was a long time ago at Portland. And he's an IndyCar mechanic to start with. And I watched him change the gear stack in one of the cars. And it was like a master's degree. And he never stepped wrong, never picked up the wrong tool, set everything in the perfect place, pulled the stack, got it all changed, put it back in. I don't think it took 3 minutes. So he became my hero about then. But we're also good friends, and he is pretty savvy on the history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and racing in general, for that matter, and is now, I think he calls himself a restoration mechanician. Do you, Poppy? Good to have you on board.
Well, thank you. Thanks. It's nice to be here with you guys.
Tackle his last name for me, Paul.
David Popaloritz.
David Popaloritz. That's what I would have said, but I didn't.
You're going to say that, weren't you?
Yes, I was. Or at least I'm going to say I was going to say that.
I got it.
Our lead story is this. One of us was down in Atlanta to this fantastic event. It wasn't Bob and it wasn't me. So tell us about this this well-promoted event, Paul, and everything about your wonderful evening.
Well, I got a call a couple of months ago to come speak at the Savoy Museum. I'd never heard of it. It's an automotive museum, and it's actually Cartersville, a little north of Atlanta. And, you know, I wasn't sure, but they made arrangements. And so, okay, you know, I'll come see it. I had no idea how cool it was. It just opened in December. It's got a beautiful grand hall. And then off the grand hall, it has a bunch of little rooms that they set up with the theme. Like in this one, there's a room for the muscle cars, for example, and several others. They had in the grand hall a bunch of Indy cars. Of course, that was nice. And then they had actually it was a 2010 Red Bull Formula One car sitting there. And the rather than have the usual, you know, like automotive signs or whatever up on the wall, it's all beautiful art of the cars that are in there. Like in the muscle car room, the art, and I'm talking now, you know, acrylic and oils, and it was all of muscle cars as well. And they keep the hoods down on those cars. This is a deal. I'm just talking about the muscle car room right now. Until Friday, the end of that particular exhibition. And then they raise the hoods for the weekend so everybody can see the power plants in there. And
wow.
It's a well thought out, and it's got a beautiful theater. We had, I made an appearance there with Ken Gross, the noted antique and classic car expert, who is also a judge at places like Pebble Beach. And the car we had in the background was Johnny Rutherford's 1964 Watson Roadster. It was the one that he drove through the fire of the Saks McDonald accident in. But obviously it's been totally reconditioned, redone, and it just is beautiful.
Sounds like a destination to me.
I would do it. There's also in the area, this group operates 3 other museums in the area. One is called the Booth Museum, and that is nothing but Western, and it's huge. It's even bigger than the Talus, which is huge. And then they have another, or the Talus, the Savoy, and then they have one called the Talus, and that is a geology and technology museum. So it's definitely a place worth going to.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. Be a good place for a long weekend.
Yeah, I'd say 3 days if you're going to do them all.
Yeah.
congratulations on,
It was fun. We had a good crowd, had great questions, and I didn't have to lie at any time during it. So that part was good too.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
recently the Speedway had an event, the BC 39.
Yeah.
A young Californian called Buddy Kofoid won the race. I know, Dave, you're into that genre particularly. In IndyCar now, they got some real talented drivers. We'll be talking about Iloff and Malakis and Kirkwood and Lundgaard. How good do you see if he would get into an IndyCar? Would he be able to go quick instantly like those guys, or would he take a little more time to adapt?
Tell you, Buddy's a pretty amazing little driver. His big thing is he can adapt to a lot of different vehicles. So he'll get from, he left here after the BC 39, went to Knoxville to run a wing sprint car. And he'll be there this week running for the Knoxville Nationals. And I mean, that's a horsepower difference. It's an aero difference. It's a completely different car. And he goes out and he's completely competitive everywhere he goes. The race he had on Thursday night was just incredible. Just a display of slide job bravery, and it was a pretty darn good race. I'm glad that it turned out well, because the crowd had to stay through a rain delay, and it's nice that they do that, because it opens up, it makes Doug and Roger feel the benefit of putting on that event. But I'll tell you, Buddy, he's a pretty amazing young man. He's tied up with Toyota pretty well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him headed the NASCAR route, just because that's where their connections are now. If they were in IndyCar, you never know. Maybe he could come and try that. He's pretty good, darn good driver.
Yeah, but I think Jimmy Johnson's shown us how difficult it is to come from a front engine car to drive a rear engine Indy car, though. I mean, he's got a huge attack going on, and he's dedicated, but it's harder than he thought. He even said that.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's, the biggest problem for Jimmy is getting the braking down. He's got 40 years of driving a car that you don't brake like a downforce car. In a downforce car, you go in, and while you're still going 180, 200 miles an hour, you stand on the pedal till you're going to break it off. And then you start letting it off as you get into the braking zone, as opposed to a non-downforce car where you, as the car slows down, you can increase your pressure. So the graph that you're looking at is completely reversed. So it's you got to train your mind and your body and your bravery to do it a different way. And I'd say it's a real tough thing. You see him on the ovals, the guy can't drive. It's just what forte.
Yeah.
Well, we've kind of already said that it wouldn't necessarily surprise if in a Ganassi car, Jimmy Johnson could win Indy next year. But you look at Takuma Sato, Elio Castroneves, any of these 40-plus drivers on a road course, they're not as quick as the awards and some of these, young, if I can use the word studs, out there today and everything. So that doesn't surprise me that Jimmy's doing any different than Castroneves or Sato or someone else at his age. But he winning Indy's what he really wants to do, I think, obviously, and anyone wants that, but he could very well do that. And
I'm sorry. Before we move on with my woefully inadequate introduction of Poppy, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came through racing and how you ended up where you are now?
Yeah, I'd like to know that.
I can't remember.
That's it.
They said, that's all I remember. No, I grew up around dirt track racing up in the Northeast, and then I moved out to California and started hanging around Ascot. And then a friend of mine, and I was racing go-karts at the time, And a friend of mine who raced go-karts worked for a sports car team. He said, "Hey, you want to go travel around and, work on sports cars?" So I did that for the summers off during college. And then after college, about 1987, I came back here to Indy, had my toolbox in the back of my VW Rabbit, went knocking on doors, handing out resumes, and everyone kind of giggled. And that was my try with IndyCar. So then went back to California and applied for a job in '91 with Hall VDS. And I worked with a midget team who had Leland McSpadden driving for us. And that name alone got me in with, because there were some midget guys and sprint car guys on the VDS team. And it kind of gave me a little credibility. And I got in, and pretty much then once you're in the circle, if you do a decent job, then you can kind of move around. It's breaking the shell of the circle. That's always the hardest and most unique thing for people.
But by the way, when you were at Ascot, did you live in the South Bay?
I lived in Westwood Village and Marina Del Rey, and we'd go down. I was working in El Segundo, and we'd work till 6 o'clock on a Saturday night, jump in the car, drive down, watch the feature, and then we'd go back to the shop and work some more.
I don't know if I told you, but I live in Redondo Beach now, but I grew up near Purdue, so I'm more Hoosier than I am Southern Californian. But we know the area, don't we, Paul?
Oh, we do. So, Poppy, what about your then IndyCar career? How did you make that final transition? And what finally decided you to move on and do something else that sounds like a lot of fun?
I got hired at Hall VDS, and I was young and kind of, a little surly, and I made it about a year with that team, and they'd seen my whole act and moved on to Ganassi, and I worked at Ganassi for a year. And then 93, Barry Green was starting a team, and I was in a job, and I didn't really want to take a step back. He says, "Well, mate, it's Formula Atlantic, but we're going IndyCar next year, I swear, and we're gonna have a test program. You can run that." I said, "Okay, I guess." And I was still kind of on that, I got to get somewhere by someday method thing. And I said, "Yeah, I'll go for it." And it was really a great team, and I enjoyed the Formula Atlantic. Learned a lot. The thing is you learn something from whatever series you're in. It's just whether your eyes are open or not. And then Chris Lovely and I ran the IndyCar test program for Jacques Villeneuve and Claude Bourbonnais. We ran in an IndyCar while they were running the Formula Atlantics. And then in 94, we went all IndyCar. 95, we were IndyCar again. We won the 500 in the championship, 4 races. In 96, we lost the player sponsorship, and and we were kind of out on the skids. And Barry again says, "Hey, guys, just stick with me. I got something coming. I'll work it out. We'll get it right." And he landed a deal with a Brazilian beer company named Brahma. We had really big PR with them. We went down to Brazil to announce the program. We had Raul Boisel driving for us, and it was a real big splash for us. And funny, it only lasted a year, and then we signed on with another British American tobacco company. Players had been under that banner, and then we went with Cool Cigarettes, and we were with them until the end of cigarette advertising in IndyCars. And then tried going to another team for 2 years. Went to Mo Nunn Racing, helped them start that team, had a good time, learned a bunch. And they say you can always come home. So I went back to Andretti, which was actually Team Green at the time. So then we became Andretti Green, then it was Andretti. And about 2007, I stopped working on the Indy cars and started doing their aero program and their special projects. And then we went and did A1GP over in Europe for a year. Traveled around with a phone card and a credit card and went racing. And then they did the Barry Green came, no, it was Kim came to me then, I think. Check that. It was Rob Edwards. Rob Edwards came to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about running an F2000 car for this kid named Sage Karam?" I'm like, okay, well, he's Michael's neighbor. Okay, so I can figure out what kind of deals. Like, we go out and we smoke everyone at St. Pete. We win every session, just pasted everyone in the race. Ended up doing really well, winning the championship. The only thing we didn't win was the IRP race, and that's my homework track, and I really wanted to win that. But yeah, and then we did F2000 Pro Mazda, and that was really some pretty fulfilling stuff because I enjoyed being with the young kids and being your input really mattered there. And actually ended up doing a little engineering work and management work, and it was a good growing time for me as well as the kids. And then did the Indy Lights program for a couple of years, and then back to the wind tunnel program, and then just kind of I guess I outgrew my I wasn't able to put up with as much. And I decided that this job at the museum was out there, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I got to do that." And that was a year and a half ago, and I still love driving into work every morning.
That's fantastic.
And you have an enormous love of history of the Indy cars and cars in general. And at your present job, I remember I walked in the shop one day, and you handed me a connecting rod for the Marmon Wasp,
Yeah.
the first car to win the Indy 500. And I thought,
Wow.
this guy is living in heaven. It's perfect.
And we're going to get to a little of that after we get through Nashville. We picked out some names that you shepherded during your career, and we'll let you comment on that. Some of those I promise you off camera I won't bring up, but it'll be a fun time. But mentioning Andretti, another Andretti is in the news. Marco Andretti has just inked the deal to race October 8th in Charlotte in the Infinity Series with the Big Machine Racing owned by Scott Borchetta. That might be a new career for him. I think I did read that he still may run Indy, which is important. But how do you think Marco will do in the Infinity Series? Bob, I'll start with you on that.
I think it's like IndyCar. It's very difficult to do those one-off races and have a lot of success at it. I'm sure he got the look to do it because of winning that Tony Stewart Series championship. That brought him a lot of notoriety and attention. And that's good. He's getting the opportunity, and be fun to see how he does. I don't know that he'll make a career out of it. And like I say, I think it's difficult, for anyone to do one-off races anymore and really succeed at them.
Is that the smart way to do it, or should he just decide I want to run a cup car, Paul?
Well, I'm not so sure he could just say, I want to run a cup car in today's environment. So yeah, kind of like Poppy was talking about, getting in the shell and getting involved, and then let him see what you can do and move up. So if he uses an Infinity car to do that, then that is pretty cool. And I think that's good series for him. If there is a trait of Michael's that I think doesn't help him, is what I see as a trait to get frustrated early. If the race car isn't perfect, or if he isn't positioned perfectly, especially in the Indy 500, then he kind of gets down on it, and I think he starts losing time. But that's just my observation. He's a super driver, and it'd be fun to see him in that car.
Mm-hmm. And Sage Karam has run a tad bit in that series too, so that certainly will get a few eyeballs at Charlotte on October the 8th. And then the third thing before we get to Nashville is Beth Coretta and Simona will be doing one more race. They originally inked for 3 races with Ed Carpenter. They're going to do the season finale at Laguna Seca. So that's great news for Simona fans. What do you think, though? I'll ask both Paul and you, Bob. How impressed or unimpressed have you been with Simona? I thought she would be running a lot stronger than she has in an Ed Carpenter car.
Well, it's not her. It's not her talent. It's just the team. It really goes along with what we're talking about. It's difficult for people to do one-offs or just a handful of races and really succeed in all series, really all the top series, but IndyCar especially, it seems, because they're so competitive. The times are so close. It's very, very difficult to crack that top 10. Everything has to fall into place. Everything has to be perfect. And it's difficult to get that just running 1, 2, 3, 4 races a season. Simona, she has plenty of talent. Just needs the team, I think, to match that talent.
Well, hopefully this is the.
And it's good to see a new team.
Oh, yeah. And
it's always good to see new teams coming along. And I know there's a big push for diversity within IndyCar. And so it's great to see female ownership and female drivers and female crew. That's kind of neat to see.
Is this Paul going to be a full season next year? Are you hearing any of that with Beth?
I have not heard that. Paul maybe has.
No, I haven't either.
That'd be nice if that did happen. I think kind of that's the goal. And I think they're smart to get tied in with Penske or Ed Carpenter in their pursuit of doing that. Kind of like Brian Herta did with Andretti a few years ago. Was a smart move. I think that helped there. Well, we had an interesting, I really loved it. I didn't watch last year's Nashville race. My golly, that was fun watching that through the streets and qualifying. And I think I enjoyed that course better than all others, particularly coming off of that bridge and down the bridge. That was something else. Who laid that out? Did either of you go to Nashville? Did you go from Atlanta to Nashville, Paul?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
I wish I could have been, but anyway.
I actually, when I went for an 11 o'clock flight out of Atlanta on Delta, and with cancellations, et cetera, and finally, what was originally was a nonstop, I went through Detroit and got home at 11 o'clock at night. So,
wow.
No, I couldn't make it to Nashville.
Well, the weather was miserably hot for qualifying, and Scott McLaughlin won the pole again, and I don't know if you call it a surprise, but certainly another name in that front row this year, Ramon Grosjean, qualified second. Lundgaard, coming off his fine performance at Indy, was third. Alex Palou fourth, Pato O'Ward fifth, and Joseph Newgarden sixth. You had on the flip side, though, Herta qualifying 23rd, which potentially may have cost him the race. Ericsson qualifying 18th, which no doubt I think cost him the point lead, and Rossi 17th. So let's talk about Herta's qualifying snafus. Bob, you want to comment?
Well, by his admittance, he went in too hard and tapped the wall. Didn't really hit it that hard, but the time was running out on that particular session. It cost the red, and of course that took away his best lap, which I don't know if it was very good or not. Anyway, he was just really getting started on I started to say red tires, but the green tires. There's been a lot of questions raised about the qualifying procedures for IndyCar by a lot of the drivers. Most feel like they should be guaranteed, so much green time. If somebody causes a red flag, okay, penalize them, take away their best lap, but don't penalize everybody else by them losing an opportunity. So I think that's something you'll hear a lot of discussion about between now and next season.
Years
Yeah,
ago,
He
at
messed
the-
up his teammate Rossi and a lot of other guys with that red flag.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think? Back in the 30s, they jumped from a 4-lap qualifying run to 10 laps. And that went on for a few years, and they went back to the 4-lap format. How would it play if they didn't do this kind of format, the knockout, and just had each car go out and run 4 laps, 10 laps, and that becomes their speed?
Well,
It would probably juggle a different starting lineup than you get through this. What do you think about that innovative idea, Paul?
It's dull. I mean, it
is-
may,
yeah,
it
it
may
is dull.
be, it may be
Fair,
great
but
for the
dull.
racers and a little fairer, but you're still in the entertainment business and you're still in the television business. And I don't think that what they've come up with is pretty good in terms of coverage and television. I wouldn't mind if they guaranteed an absolute minimum. So
Right.
let's say on Michael's spin or on Colton's spin and the red flag, that they be guaranteed like so many more laps or so many more minutes
Right.
because of that red flag.
Yeah, I agree.
But because that really hurts a lot of people.
Mhm.
Well,
That came with when they went, I think when they went to the time certain schedule, probably 15 years ago now, they start that red flags could mess up your qualifying. And they'd have to like put some sort of buffer at the end of the qualifying time wise that so that you wouldn't have dead air on the track or you wouldn't be backing up anything. So remember in the old days when they'd go for a red or something like that, it would back everything up behind it, and you all of a sudden your day would start running longer. Oh, we're half an hour behind, but now they don't ever get behind because of the time certain.
That is another consideration, especially for TV.
mentioning Christian Lundgaard qualifying third is a great weekend for Team Rahal. Graham Rahal qualified 9th and Harvey 11th. So all 3 of those. And also a shout out to Dalton Kellett. He had his best qualifying effort starting 12th in the race.
Let us remember that Graham Rahal was doing well until he center punched Pato O'Ward going into a corner and breaking the gearbox.
Yeah.
I was thinking that.
I'm telling you the facts, man.
And at a little point, David, we will tell the standings currently in IndyCar, and that really kind of hurt O'Ward's chances of winning the championship. And I'll have those points for us a little bit. But it was the next day, lightning messed up things. They were pulling people out of the stands and it delayed. And the big story is Scott Dixon winning his 53rd with kind of a wounded car and breaking Mario's the tie for second place, just behind AJ Foyt now. I had a question, and maybe you guys might know, a question from Daryl from Fort Wayne, and it ties in with this. He said, Scott Dixon just moved ahead of Mario Andretti for second place in the all-time wins. Who would be the top 5 of all leaders if they didn't count the dirt, the road races, and the street courses, only ovals? And then he says the same question for all-time pole winners. So if I understand Daryl's question, if you only look who won the pole or won the race that were on ovals, whether it be Indy or Milwaukee or Fontana or Pocono or College Station or all the ovals, would that jumble it up? differently
sure.
than it is today. I don't know the
Yeah.
answer to that.
No, I don't, I'd have to do research. I would think Foyt would probably be number one or certainly in the top five because most of his wins came on ovals. And again, I'll throw this to Paul because he was covering a lot of those races. I don't know that AJ won too often on a road course. I think he won when they went to England back in the 70s on one of the road courses there. But I would think he has the most wins on.
Yeah, but Floyd also won a lot on the dirt too. So I think.
Well, yeah, if you eliminate the dirt, but
Yeah.
still.
His question was, if you don't count the dirt, you don't count the street races, and you don't count the road races, and only ovals, who would be the top five all time? And then he said he wants to know on the as far as pole positions too. So I don't know that answer. You know, that's
that would be I think that'd be an interesting number to research.
Yeah.
And if for no other reason, maybe you separate out the different tracks, sprints, the dirt. You know, you even got to, with AJ, you're going to have to put a Daytona 500 win in there.
Yeah.
No, this is just, as I understand it, just an IndyCar.
No, and that's what I'm saying is how far back as a champ car do you want to actually go? Where do you want to start that line?
Mhm.
And that's hard for me. I almost want to say late 50s, early 60s, maybe 60 as a starting point and count forward from there. But I also don't, I can't off the top of my head. Maybe Poppy can. He's really good at this stuff. Remember, I know Foyt got in a sprint car for an IndyCar race at one time, but I don't know how that would affect everything if we just chose a date and went forward from there.
So,
Poppy?
well, that might be a good article for the Old Timers newsletter one day, if we know someone that on the editorial there. But I thought it was a good question. But anyway, Dixon wins, McLaughlin second, Pelot was third. This was an interesting comment because Pelot led the most laps, leading 31, since he and Ganassi were supposedly not speaking because of that lawsuit. What would have happened had he won the race in victory lane?
Well, afterwards, him and Chip had a little hug afterwards.
Yeah,
Chip did go over and congratulate him on and I could tell by the body language with Pelot and some of the people around him, I assume it's Pelot's girlfriend or wife, you know, that they were very pleased that he came over there.
So, yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing, but yeah, they did seem to warm the ice a little bit with that good job type comment. So the standings now, we're missing a couple of the most important things. The crash fest, 8 cautions in the race. Didn't match last year's 9 cautions, but I know from the text I got from you, Paul, you have an opinion on the Grosjean-Dugarden crash.
Yeah, I had trouble seeing what the officials saw. Admittedly, the officials have more views that they can look at that don't make it onto television. Where'd Poppy go? We lose him. But from what I saw and watching on a pretty big screen, I didn't see why Newgarden shouldn't have been pushed back, because I thought that was totally his instigation, not just an unavoidable contact situation. But that's, I guess, why I'm sitting here and not in the control booth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know he got a little testy about it in his comments afterwards about that.
Dave, down at your back, did you see anything in that race, or have any opinion that won't jeopardize your future?
No, I tell you what, I listened to it on the radio, so seeing it wasn't my thing, but it sounded like it was Sounded like it was kind of a shit show with all the. I'm not a fan. I mean, I guess I always felt robbed when they went under the checkered flag under yellow, but boy, it just seems contrived when we go red and then they go green, white, not green, white, checkered, but virtually that. I
Right.
don't know, but I don't know. It sounds like a difficult track to master, and being bumpy, it's pretty taxing on the cars. Yeah, I never really cared for bumpy tracks because it was always the one that would find the problems in the car.
Yeah.
Well, great theater on the restarts, with almost 3 abreast. I'm trying to make it 4 abreast at some point. Another crash I want to comment on is the 2 rookies, Kirkwood and Malukas, getting together. It ruined Malukas's fine day. Kirkwood's starting to bend up some equipment in this season and everything. What's your take on the great run of Dave, I thought, who qualified 7th, by the way, too. So it ended, well, actually, Kirkwood qualified pretty good in the Foyt car.
Yeah.
We congratulate him on that. Unfortunate that they were both being commented on what a good race they were running and they get together.
Right.
But such great young talent, Dave, just, if you're an IndyCar fan, you just got to love the 4 rookies this year and the relatively new ones that are at the top of the chart already. It's just fantastic. So here's the point standings that I promised. Will Power held on to his lead, and he has now 450 points. But the real story is how Scott Dixon leapfrogged the 2nd place and is only 6 behind at 444. Ericsson slid down to 438. Newgarden is 4th at 428. Alex Palou is at 417. And up in his game is Scott McLaughlin now at 392. And Award fell down to 7th at 391. Rossi at 330 at 8th. Rosenquist at 325 at 9th. And the guy that very easily could have been running away with the championship this year, Colton Hurd, is at 315 had he not had all his misfortunes. So again, it remains close, and we go to an oval for the next race, which will add to the intrigue. So we're going to go now to our special featured guest, Dave, with some questions. We're going to let you comment on some fun things. I have a particular interest in your 1995 year with Jacques Villeneuve winning the race and coming from 2 laps down to win the race. Tell us some of the highlights from your perspective about Villeneuve's win.
Well, we were doing pretty well. I mean, there was the big wreck at the beginning, which kind of messed up some pit suite sequencing for people, and then we ended up getting in that yellow where we fanned right on by the pace car a couple of times, and then I remember after they assessed the penalty, we were kind of standing there in the pit area, and Barry came on the radio and said, "All right, boys, keep your chins up. We're not out of this yet." And it's kind of like, okay. And then we got, with the yellows came, and we got out of sequence, and we made up a lap, and then the other one came just like that. And then on the last yellow came out, we were sitting in second behind Goodyear, and Tony Cicali, who was the most wonderful race engineer ever, he got on the radio to Jacques, and he says, he's a real philosophical guy. He says, it's pretty rare that you get an opportunity like this and just make the best of it. And next thing you know, Jacques pulls up alongside of Scott on the backstretch and kind of gives him a little look over and then backs up. And I don't know if that got in Scott's head that he needed to get going or not, but he got going and the pace car didn't get going, and he got a black flag for that. And we ended up, I don't know if there'd been a full combat fight, if we'd been able to run him down, because he had Honda and Goodyear at the time, and and Firestone at the time, and he was pretty strong there at the very end. But we ended up with the win, and it was like being a rock star for 30 minutes. Everyone cheering, and it was pretty awesome.
It was certainly a middle finger to the flag person to ignore the black flag. I always kind of like that on Goodyear for doing that.
I was setting in the fourth turn then, and when Villeneuve went by the pace car, I mean, it wasn't just slow. I mean, he blew by the pace car. I think the pace car was rocking when he went by, and I never understood why he did that.
Barry had this thing where it all goes back to Phoenix the year before. Remember when he torpedoed Hero in turn 3? Barry had this thing about pack up. And that's what Jacques was doing when he torpedoed Hero. Well, he still would always do that. And it was pack up. But he didn't know that he was the leader then. So he was under, haul ass instructions. And just, I don't know. That was a strange deal.
It was. It really was.
But
Well, of course,
you want to know the sad?
Yeah.
The sad thing on, you were talking about the black flag, is on Monday morning after the 500, we're out there doing the traditional photos with the car and the trophy and the wreath, and the photographers would say, look right, look center, look left, or it was actually left, center, right. Every time we looked left, right at the starting stand was the black flag board. It was an old board with some light bulbs on it that had numbers, and still had Goodyear's number on it. It was like, wow. Oh my God. It was just like a constant reminder of how you got where you are.
Well, Villeneuve won in his second year at Indy. He, as a rookie, got second place. And I wonder, this is a speculative question, had he stayed in IndyCar instead of gone to F1, what do you see his career that would have been, Paul?
I'm not really sure. And maybe this is something that Poppy can help me with. I never really saw him sparkle. I mean, he had a good win and he was racing there, but I never felt in IndyCar that he totally had it. Am I totally off base there, Poppy?
No, I think that he had natural speed, but no, I just didn't see the phenom of it. I was enthralled with it because it was happening with me, but I don't know. I don't know that he would have, that he probably would have won some more races. His strong suit was, and this is what you're talking about Marco earlier, when he got upset, he didn't throw his toys out of the crib and let the whole race go down the drain. He was real low key, almost aloof, to the point where something happened, you go, oh, okay, and he just go on about his business, and so that.
And I guess that's what I'm saying is he was kind of passive.
Yes, agreed.
Now there is in that same finish, pretty good story on the other side. Of course, Scott Goodyear, the eternal second. And what, Bob, do you know the stat where he lost 3 500s by like less than 3 seconds?
Yeah,
it's just,
yeah.
But I do know on that race that from the Scott Goodyear point of view, that was going to be a Honda win, which would have been new first.
Uh-huh.
And when and As a result of that, we now have a flag that says we have stopped scoring you because that's what they did.
Yeah.
But Steve Horn, who's, that was his team. He and Scott were on the radio and they said, we're going to keep going. We're
Right.
going to prove that this can actually do the 500 miles first. So
Yeah.
that's what they did. But it didn't fit the rule. So
Right.
there you go.
Right. Exactly.
I'll have to get Scott on here sometime and see what
Yeah. Good
he's
guy.
got some interesting views on those.
My question would be, which of those 3 wins or losses haunts him the most? That one, or
he'll love that.
92,
He'll love that question, Danny.
or the year that he loses the Lion Die. I thought he was going to win that race in
Yeah,
'97.
but that was the screwiest finish ever. I mean, green light's on here, yellow flag is here.
Right.
I had, as a broadcaster, I had no idea. I could see my green light come up on my panel, but I'm looking down the track and I'm seeing a yellow light. So,
Hey, what light was on your panel in 2002?
Remind me there, Bobby. Help me out with that question.
PT and Neves going into turn 3 with.
Yeah,
Remember the yellow light came on?
Yeah. Well, those.
Just wondering.
What can I say about the officials? They do their best.
Yep.
That's the same thing we did in television, and we got nailed for it all the time. So somebody else should enjoy it too.
We do it as mechanics.
Hey, Dave, who would you say was better, Jacques Villeneuve or his dad? I know different things, but in F1, he's really revered, but never won a world driving champion. And then Jacques wins the world driving championship. I'll ask all 3 of you that. I tend to think the dad was better, but just what's your take?
Well, okay. I mean, what Gilles had that Jacques didn't is what Paul was just talking about: the flair, the charisma, the charge, all that stuff. That was Gilles' deal, and Jacques, being so reserved, didn't really have that spunk or the flair. And but I got to say, just on pure, I think the old man was better.
Bob, who do you say?
Well, the old man was definitely more exciting. I'll put it that way. It's hard to compare directly, but be honest, it's somewhat like Scott Dixon. Here's Scott Dixon that's stuck in between AJ Foyt and Mario Andretti for a number of IndyCar wins. And some of these young kids are getting more attention than he is.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that's because Scott's so laid back and low key. Kind of like your Poppy were describing Jacques. So it's for a fan especially, what makes a great race car driver? Winning is part of it, but that flair, I think, and that excitement, even in losing, really was what draws fans to a particular driver and makes us consider that driver maybe better than they really are.
Well, I'm really amazed at almost age 50 and not really have been in a race car. He goes down and races in the Daytona 500
Yeah.
and does quite respectable on that. So congratulations again to your win in '95, Poppy, on that. So you also had Dario Franchitti as your driver.
Yeah.
And he became a 3-time winner. And then he had that bad wreck at Houston and announced his retirement. Were you surprised that he retired after that?
No. I mean, everyone was just so happy that he was gonna be okay and not be long-term affected, or seriously long-term affected. That I think people were happy to see him get out when he could. Between Greg having gone early on and Dan. And then that for him, I think that he saw that, you know, he didn't need to do it. He still likes driving. He drove our car at Goodwood. He drove the 1986 Budweiser March of Bobby Rahal's 1985, 86. And he drove it there at Goodwood. He had a good time. And he still loves driving stuff, and he you know, he loves flogging a car. I know it was a good time for him to go. I know he probably could have been a 4-time winner, easily 4-time winner.
I agree. But he's darn lucky to survive that Michigan crash and also that Kentucky crash. I mean, of the visual, the Houston one was probably the tamest of the three. There was a pretty good sprint car driver that sat on the pole in 55 named Jerry Hoyt that had a pretty bad head injury at Langhorne, but not that bad. He came back to run 2 or 3 weeks later, and then he has another head injury at Oklahoma City, and he succumbed to that. And they've always said it had not been Langhorne happen, that he would have survived that Oklahoma City crash. And I think all that may have been Franchitti's thinking as well. You know, I'd better not take one more hit to the head or something like that. But yeah, I agree. He certainly would have been probably a 4-time winner. He even told me he would get to the 4-time before Elio did too. But I guess
I hadn't talked to him personally, Dario personally, but just through Robin Miller. I know a couple of years ago, Robin said that Dario told him he was still having some problems with memory and some effects from that head injury. So I think that was a very smart move that he made to get out while he did, or when he did.
Now, Dave, you're on the Fernando Alonso operation as well.
Yep.
That was impressive. That first year there, he and Hunter Ray lost an engine late in the race, but that could have been a different outcome if those two engines would have survived. Had he lasted, do you think Alonso would have won in 2017?
That's funny you say that, because after the race, after we got back to the garage and all, and it was dark, and we were standing around the garage, and actually he was signing some things for some people, and we started talking about the race, and I said, yeah, man, I don't know, because we were back so far on that last restart. I really didn't think, I don't know that we would have gotten up there. He goes, oh no, I was just saving my tires. I said, oh my God, you're ruining my life by telling me that. 18 laps more. He says, ready to go. And I'm like, man.
How was Fernando to work with, Poppy?
The guy was like 100% professional. Never saw him with a cell phone in his hand texting. Every time he came in, if he was talking about, if you were looking at something on the car, he wanted to know how it worked. And then he would say, like, he'd look at the weight jacker and then he'd say, okay, so that'll help me for qualifying here, or how will that work at this time? And everything he did, he related to how he could make it work better in the race or use it. He was a top-notch dude. He was to himself, and he had a handler and all that stuff, but he knew how to play to his crew, and he knew that they were his guys, which is key. And you all the way back to the Benetton days. That's how he got his deal was. It's my crew sort of deal. Top-notch.
Good to hear.
Since we've kind of touched on F1 there, I understand that Ricardo is now done at McLaren, and that they have a Formula 3 driver going to get in that seat to at least finish the season. But I'm not sure where Colton is on his super license, but let's start some rumors here. Come on.
Union Jacks is closed, so we got to start rumors here now.
Yes,
That's right, exactly.
this is as good a place as any.
We need more liquor.
Right.
Then the stories will come out.
Yeah.
There you go.
You see, well, was there a story that never really got, true story on the air or in print about, Alonso and Honda and why he did not come back to Andretti, in 2019 and then had to run, what was not a very good McLaren that year. And had he came back in 2019, I think he would have been a very much a contender to win again with an Andretti car. Was there that much bad blood in that, Dave, that you might know?
Yeah, I think that the Japanese culture that comes with Honda, or that is Honda, is a very proud culture, and you know, you just there's some things you just don't come back from, and some of his statements and their way they took it, it just wasn't gonna, sometimes a divorce is final.
We talked about it last week briefly that he signed now with Aston Martin, a multi-year contract. You see, from your perspective, knowing him the way you know him, that strong obsession to win Indy, to have the 3 crown jewels. You see him coming back as soon as his F1 days are officially over.
I heard that like last year that had gone on the back burner, that it was no longer a possibility. But it's, when things change like that, I'm sure if the right ride, and I mean, if somebody called him up, had a full deal ready to go, and he wasn't doing anything, I'm sure he wouldn't say, "Oh no, I don't want to do that."
Well, McLaren's strong now, so they'll be a player, if he wanted to come back. I don't know if they'd want him back, but they have enough drivers as it is. And
Yeah,
I don't know what will happen to Montoya, now for next year, whether he'll remain with McLaren or not. So the other one I have an interest in is your ties with Danica Patrick there, Dave.
we when Danica first came to the team, I'd been with Dario for the 3 years prior to that, and Danica came along, and the Dario deal had gotten a little stale, so the management shook it up and moved me over to the new driver, Danica, and it was a big thing. There was a lot of press, a lot of spotlight to it. And it was a new sponsor. It was a big sponsor, GoDaddy, Motorola. She was a hell of a driver. I give her total credit on being a driver, and everything she's achieved is by skill. Towards the end of the season, I was pretty worn down on it, and that was my last year in IndyCar. So,
I know it benefited her pocketbook, but her racing career, was it a mistake to leave IndyCar to go to NASCAR, Paul?
No, it was a better stage for her, I think, in NASCAR. Plus, she can make more money in NASCAR. So,
but just strictly her racing career, trying to drive a NASCAR car versus an Indy car.
Well,
I always thought she would have been stronger had she stayed, and she legitimately could have won Indy, in my opinion.
Well, I'm kind of like Dave. I don't want to take anything away from her racing, and I think I've mentioned this before. At Homestead, I saw her go side by side with Tony Kanaan for 10 laps. I mean, she's definitely a racer and definitely could handle an Indy car. So, you know, but she went where she wanted to go and where I think she had
Yeah.
the best marquee and achieved the best success she was going to come up with.
Well, Dave, what would have happened to the security guard not separated her from Ryan Briscoe when they
Wow.
collided?
Yeah,
Better theater than her and Milpaduno together.
that I'll tell you what. She's like kicking the hornet's nest when you piss her off. I wouldn't want to have been Ryan because yeah, she could have lit him up.
Well, like Weldon said, I can't hit a girl. You know, so.
Well, that's the other thing is it would have been, yeah, because he would have had his hands tied really by, yeah.
Do I dare ask an Uncle Bobby question? Had she came after Uncle Bobby, what would have happened?
Pay-per-view.
That one I can't figure. And I'm not even going to take a shot at that because, you know, Bobby's unusual or was unusual. So who knows what he would have come up with.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, you're saying off camera that you're now got possession of the 1986 Bobby Rahal winning car that you're part of the restoration team on. Tell us a little bit about that project and it's how that will complement what you have in on display.
Well, that's the newest addition to the museum. Actually, the museum acquired it from a private collector. Bobby Rahal just became a member of the board, and it's sort of a nice welcome for him to be here and have his car here now. And we picked it up. It was in very good condition when we got it. So really didn't take a terrible bunch of stuff. We ended up converting it over to road course setup. Other than we left the Speedway wings on, but we put road course setup on the suspension to take to Goodwood. And previously it had been in Goodwood a couple of years prior, but it got wrecked there. So it was all reworked and repainted. And it's a nice car. It runs real well. It's got a Cosworth DFX. And it runs real clean. Man, that manual injection burns a lot of fuel though. I get used to the electronic injection on modern day cars, and they're pretty stingy with the fuel, and that thing just pours it. And we ended up running out of fuel sitting. They had a red flag on the track, and we ended up running out of fuel sitting on the starting line because it drank 4 gallons in 4 minutes.
Wow.
I gotta ask this question since you were with Andretti and that Mario's spectacular flip when he comes out of, I guess, retirement to drive Michael's car. You didn't see it, but you heard the aftermath. Tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes stuff that may have not gotten in the press on what should have been Mario's final day on Earth.
Yeah, that was a big one. He cheated him that time. It was a brand new car. We were just testing it out. Had about 230 some miles on it, and the checkered flag came out. All day long, he'd been kind of just staying within the lines, not pushing it, and just doing the test, running the test items that we had, getting data, and like I said, not throwing up a number. And at the end of the day, he ran a pretty good lap the lap before, and then the yellow came out, and he knew it was the last run. And I suspect that he saw the yellow and thought, okay, I'm just going to finish this lap out, right? Thinking that it was 6 o'clock. Well, little do you know that Kenny Brack had locked up a motor and turned it around him just at the exit of turn 1. And we heard Brack's motor go silent. And we're like, oh, and we saw the yellow come on, and Mario goes by, and then his goes silent. Because when you're testing, you can hear the cars all the way around the track. And we're like, uh-oh, either he ran into him or he spun or he just stopped. So we had no idea. And ended up calling back to the shop. One of the guys at the shop had seen it on TV on the news chopper, had shown it because they just happened to be there with the helicopter. he goes, "Oh my God, that's terrible." And we're like, "Geez, what's he talking about?" We had no idea. And then the tow truck shows up and it's got these buckets full of parts. I'm like, "Holy crap, what happened?" And then Mario shows up. He's kind of a little dazed, kind of had that hollow kind of look, and he had a little raspberry on his chin. And didn't say much about it. He was real quiet. And then the car came back, and it was two pieces. When it landed, it stretched the lower motor mount bolts so much that they did a tension failure with. So there are little bullet tips at the end of them, and completely snapped the bottom. It was before we had nose cone tethers, and it threw the nose cone over the fence onto the 16th Street. It was a big hit.
Wow.
Well, Dave, we dedicate this show to Robin Miller. And you knew Robin. I'll let you tell your best Robin Miller story you'd like to share with us.
Well, I don't have any dirty laundry, but I'll tell you what I always admired about Robin. It was funny because most of our time was spent in pit lane together, and Robin would never come up to you and say, "Hey, what's the scoop on this?" or "What do you think on this?" or blah, blah, blah. He would come up, and he was the craftiest. He would come up and tell you something. "Oh, hey, you hear this? Oh, you believe this?" And he'd get you talking about it. And then the next thing you know, you're telling him everything you know. And it was the best interview. It was like, he primed the pump with a little bit of news, and then you just end up spitting more stuff out. And he'd walk away, and I go, "Shit, I told him everything."
Well, hopefully you had fun on our show today, Dave. You'd consider coming back?
Anytime. It was really great. Someday we'll go for a tour maybe through the museum or the restoration shop or something like that, or when we're doing something cool.
But we always kind of wrap this up, Dave, with final thoughts. So, Bob, I'm going to let you give your final thoughts over on Nashville, and then Paul, I'll come to you, and then we look ahead to St. Louis.
Exciting race, and it's pretty neat to have an Indy car race, and in a city like Nashville, there's a lot of buzz there all the time, and so Indy car becomes part of that. So that's pretty neat. I just had a quick comment for Poppy, more for our viewers. Now, are you there in the restoration shop now, Poppy? Is that the background behind you part of the shop?
No, actually, I'm in the basement of the museum, and this booth that I'm in is where the cars get detailed before they either go to shows or go back up on the floor. It's kind of just our clean booth area.
Okay, so that is part of the museum.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
The actual restoration shop is the old house sprint car shop over outside of turn 2.
I just
And Paul,
thought it was a neat
your
setting.
final thoughts are on the weekend.
First of all, my son's calling me. He's probably seeing us and wanting to criticize Poppy. That's because they worked together for a while. I want to talk in regard to Nashville. I don't like to see that many cars wrecked, and I really don't. And I know it makes for good television, but I also can remember when we were doing the IROC, the open of the IROC was all of these cars crashing. And I finally said, "Well, how are you making these guys into great champions when all we see them doing is wrecking?" And the answer really was, well, that's what the viewer likes. I'm beginning to wonder, and this is just me. These cars are now so safe, and you get on a track where your miles per hour isn't that quick relatively. I wonder if the younger ones have decided that the race car is not going to hurt them, and they're safe, and so they try things that perhaps they shouldn't. Just my view. I'm sure somebody will straighten me out on that within a half hour.
Like when they put the cage on the sprint cars.
Yeah, that was bad.
So, next race will be an oval. We're down to 3, and this very tight battle. Poppy, thank you again for being our special guest.
Yeah,
So-
very
Thanks for
interesting.
So for our Speedway Insiders, Paul Page and Bob Gates, this is Denny Miller wishing you Godspeed, and we'll see you next time.